One of the key tools in great storytelling is the use of rules, and those rules that I'm talking about are the way that storytellers convey the facts of their world, whether that's a character dying or something small like where a character is. However, what makes these not facts but rules is that the author at any time can break these rules and tell you that the character is still alive or that the person is standing somewhere else. While a lot of great writers use these rules and their flexibility to their advantage, the mangaka of Hunter x Hunter, Yoshiro Togashi, is one of the few writers who uses these rules to deceive and trick the viewer. When being told a story, a very small portion of viewers will question the honesty of the one telling the story, because an author almost never manipulates the viewer and fabricates the truth, and that is exactly what makes Hunter x Hunter special. Through 148 episodes, the viewer is constantly and intentionally misled to make every small event feel surprising. For example, look at the fight between Hisoka versus Kastro. We are introduced to the fight by being told that Hisoka and Kastro are close to evenly matched, yet right out of the gate, Kastro is in control, continuously attacking Hisoka, and Hisoka can't fight back. Throughout the beginning of the fight, it looks like Kastro is disappearing and reappearing elsewhere, bypassing most of Hisoka's dodges. Kastro then attacks with a technique said to be able to split a tree in two and cuts off Hisoka's arm with it. We then learn that Kastro hasn't been disappearing at all, but he's been creating a double to make it look like he's in two places at once. We also learn that creating a double takes a lot of focus. After losing his arm, Hisoka puts a cloth over his detached arm and throws it in the air, transforming it into playing cards. Hisoka then performs a magic trick using the cards and pulls a card out of his open wound, throwing that card at Kastro. Kastro then repeats his previous attack, removing Hisoka's other arm, but notices Hisoka's previous arm has reattached itself. Following that, Kastro rushes at Hisoka using both him and the double, but Hisoka can tell which is the real one by the bloodstain from the card that he threw earlier, shocking Kastro. Hisoka predicts that Kastro will then die in a frenzied dance, and Hisoka's detached arm flies at Kastro, striking him right in the chin, disorienting him. Following that strike, the playing cards on the ground fly on their own, stabbing into Kastro, killing him in the predicted frenzied dance, with Hisoka emerging the victor. Shortly after the match, we learn several things, like Hisoka's arm was never reattached, it just looked like it. Also, Hisoka's arm never turned into cards, it was just thrown and stuck onto the ceiling as an illusion. The reason I explained this beat by beat was to now show you the process of the fight through the rules established. The two are evenly matched. Kastro is disappearing. Kastro's attack can split a tree in two. Hisoka lost an arm. Rule 1 revised, Kastro is stronger. Rule 2 revised, Kastro is making a double, not disappearing. Kastro needs to focus to make a double. Hisoka turned his detached arm into playing cards after putting a cloth over it. Hisoka performs a magic trick and pulls cards out of his open wound. Hisoka throws a card at Kastro. Hisoka loses his other arm. Rule 4 revision, Hisoka's arm is attached again. Hisoka can sense who the double is. Hisoka says Kastro will die in a frenzied dance. Hisoka's detached arm attacks Kastro on its own. Kastro is groggy. The playing cards flew on their own, stabbing into Kastro. Kastro dies in a frenzied dance. Rule 1 revision, Hisoka is stronger. Hisoka wins. Rule 4 revision, Hisoka's arm never actually attached itself. Rule 7 revision, Hisoka threw his arm onto the ceiling. Rule 12 revision, Hisoka controlled his detached arm. Rule 14 revision, Hisoka controlled the cards. That is 16 rules with 8 rule revisions in only 17 minutes, so how did Togashi trick the viewer with those rules? Beyond the revisions, Togashi supplies a lot of information to confuse the viewers. Here are the rules that most people focus on, rightly so. They seem like the big ones, but those are just the theatrics. Much like how a magician distracts to fool the viewer for an illusion, Togashi controls how you think by painting such a vivid and detailed picture that you can only think about the details right in front of your face. There is not a single fight where the viewer isn't given 100% of the information, but only about a quarter of the information is necessary. The fight between Hisoka and Kastro could have just been 5 rules. Kastro can make a double, Hisoka marks the real Kastro, Hisoka can see who the double is, Hisoka attacks the real one, Hisoka wins. Instead of that, 11 more rules are added to fog our perceptions, confusing us as to what the whole picture is, and by the end, after the rug is pulled out from under us, Togashi always spends a couple minutes explaining how he tricked us in the wrap-up of the fight. But this even applies to non-battle scenarios. Just look at the Greed Island arc, which is all about collecting cards that have different abilities, or rules if you will. In the manga, we see the rules of 163 different cards, which could be used at any time, and on top of that, each of these cards has their own rules, like the rarity of it and how many are allowed to exist in the world at one time. Add on to that the rules of each character's abilities and the rules of the world itself beyond the cards, and all of a sudden, any situation in that arc could have dozens upon dozens of rules applied to it just by existing in this arc. And when there's almost 200 rules to keep track of, you're going to prioritize particular ones, and Togashi constantly uses a mix of what you know and what you have forgotten. Not only that, but by the end of this arc, the majority of those rules are no longer relevant, and there's a new set of rules created just for the next arc, so that you can never memorize everything and predict what's next. As a prime example for how Togashi can be quite the trickster, look at our main character Gon. He's a lovable child full of energy and enthusiasm, he sees the best in everyone and is pretty much a prime example of innocence. Whether he's dealing with killers, cowards, killers, liars, thieves, or more killers, he never judges anyone wrongfully, and he seems to never be wrong. He is truly a good person, and almost everyone around him can see that. Gon echoes the shonen protagonists we've come to expect from characters like Goku and Luffy. They may be a bit odd in their way of thinking and enjoy a fight, but by God they're always heroes and do good every single time. That is, if you ignore the fact that Gon's own teacher is scared of what Gon is capable of, referring to Gon as a monster, or if you ignore the fact that his friend Zapile says that Gon has no form of morality. He's curious about things that are both good and evil and walks a fine line between them. Or if you ignore the fact that he enjoys fighting so much that he knowingly and happily risked the lives of both his best friend and his teacher, just to have a longer fight with someone. Those three examples are all easy to forget about through a long-running series, and again, it's those few moments that are hidden alongside a bunch of other moments that reveals the truth. Everything you're seeing tells you he's a great person, except those small things that you forget about as soon as the episode is over. This all leads up to when the truth about Gon is revealed in the Chimera Ant arc, where he actually threatens to murder a blind child and then attempts to kill himself just to get revenge. Not to mention, when he does get revenge, he spends a large portion of time mutilating the body of the opponent he murdered. Just like in the Hisoka and Kastro fight, the small details can tell you everything. People tell you Gon is a monster, capable of any act regardless of morality, and we even see him throw away the lives of his closest companions. Yet the Chimera Ant arc still catches people off guard because of how nice and innocent Gon seems. And that is how Togashi fools the viewer. He hides the truth, buries it under speculation and the viewer's expectations. It doesn't matter if it's an individual fight, a whole arc, or the main character. Togashi knows how to trick the viewer, and he will every chance he can. So next time you're watching an episode of Hunter x Hunter, take some time to look at the things you ignored before. It may reveal some new details or even foreshadow events yet to come.